We're back. We're back with another live. It is Bryce, obviously, host of the What's Happening podcast, but also the owner of the What's Happening channel. Now, this is going to be a fun live, probably a short one because it's like a later live. So it's probably going to be a shorter live. But we are going to be finding out today. Is Joe him? Is he? Well, you're going to have to tune in and find out. Plus, since I am a podcaster, you are going to hear my opinion on Joe Rogan and his show. And most of all, it's not going to be really an opinion on his show specifically. It's going to be an opinion on top 1% podcasts. So, coming from a smaller podcast. So I'm going to get right into it. This video is from Patrick CC. It is in the description. Go check him out. Also, too, please hit the subscribe button. If you like what you see here, hit the like button. Obviously, the button that looks like this. And if you would like to support the streams and or my mental health podcast in the future, there's my cash app down there. And it will be happy to receive, some donations on there. So, let's get right into it. Is Joe Rogan him? Let's go.
In high places is a cheat code to becoming successful in any industry, but sometimes it feels like it's the only way to become successful in the entertainment industry. This has become more apparent in the stand-up comedy / podcast industry within the past few years. The Joe Rogan effect, or the Brogan effect, is essentially that any comedian who is friends with or regularly featured on the Joe Rogan Experience would have a significant advantage to becoming a wildly successful comedian or podcaster. Some of these comedians are hilarious, and others are clearly not cut from the same cloth. Even Cat Williams has been critical of the Rogan sphere.
That would be like me being on Joe Rogan. Joe don't want me on there. I need to be on Shannon. Joe got 6 comedians that never been funny he want to push out.
Today we are going to analyze Joe Rogan's impact on the comedy industry and the comics who strategically aligned themselves with Rogan to advance their careers, starting with Brendan Schaub, who Joe convinced to become a comedian.
But wasn't Brendan Schaub? Here's the thing, though. No, I may be mistaken, but wasn't Brendan Schaub, wasn't he a failed, UFC fighter?
Only to regret that decision a few years later. In December of 2014, Joe was sitting across the table from UFC heavyweight Brendan Schaub, who was just coming off his second loss in a row, this time by knockout. Joe spent 20 to 30 minutes dissecting Brendan's fighting skill and capabilities, and then blatantly stated that he is not good enough to fight in the UFC.
The reality of your skill set and where you at now, I don't see you beating the elite guys. It's not that you don't try hard, it's not that you're not dedicated, it's not that you're not disciplined, it's not that you're not intelligent. There's shit that other people can do that you can't do.
Now Joe was just trying to be honest. He was trying to be a good friend. Their other friend, Brian Callen, who is a stand-up comedian, chimed into the conversation to suggest Schaub had a comedy career in front of him.
What I care about is the fact that you have a future in other things and you're really good at. You're really funny.
Dude, you know how many pictures that I've gotten sent to me that say, don't put me in a sauna, make me my way out? No. He say funny shit.
Now, when you have 2 professional comedians telling you that you are funny, and you already host a successful sports / comedy show, it's obvious that pursuing a comedy career is better than continuing to get knocked out in the UFC. Yeah. So Brendan officially retired from MMA and began podcasting.
Well, that's the thing. If I have people that are widely successful around me telling me, hey, man, don't do that. You should be doing this instead. It's going to actually kind of make me think for a minute. Hold on. Maybe they're right. Because, if you think about it, right? if Joe Rogan tells somebody to do something, or kind of like what he did with Brendan Schaub, encouraged him to take a different career path, they're going to listen. Like, people are going to listen to him. You know what I mean? Oh, my bad, guys.
In other things and you're really good at. Like, you're really funny.
Dude, you know how many pictures that I've gotten sent to me that say, "Don't put me in a sauna, make me my way out"? I know. He's say funny shit.
Now, when you have two professional comedians telling you that you are funny, and you already host a successful sports/comedy show, it's obvious that pursuing a comedy career is better than continuing to get knocked out in the UFC. So Brendan officially retired from MMA and began podcasting full-time. Schaub has been featured on the Joe Rogan Experience 90 times, which is more than any other guest in history. His exposure to the massive JRE fanbase allowed him to bypass the 10-year grind through small clubs and dive bars that all comedians have to do to build their name in the industry. In less than 1 year, Brendan was doing solo stand-up tours.
It's almost like YouTube, okay? What I mean by it's almost like YouTube is most YouTubers grind for years and years and years and years and years and years and years before they finally get at that plateau where they want to be. Well, unless you are associated with like a bigger personality, obviously, like how Brendan Schaub was, correlated with Joe Rogan because he was on the Joe Rogan Experience 90 times. So, of course, that builds exposure. So, and then, they get, Brendan Schaub from Joe Rogan. And obviously, Joe Rogan probably puts in a really good word for him. And he gets to bypass. But I actually don't think in a way that is a good thing because you're not I always thought of a lot of things as a grind. And if you're not grinding to do it, and if you're not, how can I explain it? If you're not grinding, then what are you really accomplishing? Like, you know what I mean? That's how I feel.
Shows were in front of fairly large crowds considering he had not proved himself as a funny comedian. He started another podcast called The King and the Sting alongside Theo Vaughn. By the end of 2018, Brendan owned and produced 3 very successful podcasts, was traveling around the country selling out comedy shows while being aligned with some of the biggest comics in the business after just 2 years in. He then released his first stand-up special on Showtime called You'd Be Surprised. Now, releasing a special is a huge moment in a comedian's career, as it stamps a permanent piece of their art that was carefully crafted over years of hard work. Most legendary comics waited 8 to 10 years before they were good enough to release their first special. With an average rating of 1.4 out of 10 stars, it's safe to say that comedy fans decided that Brendan was not ready. And while I'm not going to sit here and pick apart his entire special, his first joke about getting a haircut definitely speaks volumes about what he thinks is a good punchline.
There you go, but don't sweat it, bro. We got Jamal here. He's very good. Just sit in the chair, he'll be right with you. So I sit in the chair, I'm thinking to myself, all right, clearly Jamal's a black dude.
Okay. As soon as I heard him say Jamal, I already knew what the joke punchline was going to be. When you're a comedian, I mean, I don't have any comedic experience or anything like that. But when you're a comedian, don't you think that you should actually make a punchline that's like kind of, in a way, unexpected to make it more funny?
This dude comes out of the bathroom, he's all, "What's up, man? I'm Jamal." He was Asian as shit. Feel way better about this.
Wake me up when this comedy special is over, for real.
If I needed help with math or something,
You ain't funny.
The joke is 2 minutes
You ain't
long,
never
but the
been
whole story
funny.
was about how he got a bad haircut by an Asian barber named Jamal. He also made fun of an Asian doctor who was servicing his injury after his loss to Travis Brown.
This giant Asian doctor walks up to me and goes, Mr. Shab, I'm sorry for your loss. He takes out the biggest syringe you've ever seen in your life, like he's out of a goddamn comic book. Goes, Mr. Shab, I have to numb your lip. You need many, many stitches. This be worst pain in your life, guaranteed. Worst pain in your life.
As if the joke wasn't bad enough, this is the actual voice of the doctor he was mimicking.
I take care of all the fighters as well as employees within the...
See, this is a moment in time where it's like, okay, where somebody has to come to the realization that they're not him. Someone has to come to the realization that you are being the epitome of not funny. And this is the epitome of not funny. I mean, this dude straight up sounds like Barack Obama. And like, look.
He was Asian as shit. Feel way better about this if I needed help with math or some shit, you know? I was like...
The joke is 2 minutes long, but the whole story was about how he got a bad haircut by an Asian barber named Jamal. He also made fun of an Asian doctor who was servicing his injury after his loss to Travis Brown.
This giant Asian doctor walks up to me and goes, Mr. Shab, I'm sorry for your loss. He takes out the biggest syringe you've ever seen in your life, like he's out of a goddamn comic book. Goes, Mr. Shab, I have to numb your lip. You need many, many stitches. This be worst pain in your life, guaranteed. Worst pain in your life.
As if the joke wasn't bad enough, this is the actual voice of the doctor he was mimicking.
I take care of all the fighters as well as employees within the...
Barack Obama had us. Like, he actually sounds like Barack Obama. And then, so you're telling me that just for the joke, Brendan Schaub put on like a fake Asian accent just for the joke. He put on a fake accent just for the joke. Try to tell somebody that you're not funny without saying that I'm not funny. Like, man, I'm funnier than Brendan Schaub. Like,
even Rogan said years later that Schaub's special was a mistake.
The first one, I would have probably tried to talk you out of it, but I already talked you out of fighting.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't talk him out of this too.
Joe now admits that Brendan was not funny enough to release a special, but continuously allows him to promote.
but that's the thing. If he ain't funny enough for a special, then why let him? Why continuously promote it if you don't think he's really ready? You know, and here's the thing about it, right? Oh, he was just supporting them, being a good friend. Yeah, but here's the thing. If you're not, I don't think there's anything wrong with just being like, yeah, I'm not ready. Or, yeah, you're not ready, so I don't think I'm going to really promote this, man. I'm sorry. Like, what's wrong with that? Nothing is really inherently wrong with that, for real. Like, I don't understand why it's like such a big deal. Like, oh my God, I can't tell Brendan Schaub like that he ain't ready, that he ain't funny. Like, when y'all know beforehand he wasn't funny, but y'all still promote him.
his comedy to the millions of JRE viewers. They both convinced the JRE community that Brendan's second comedy special, Gringo Poppy, was going to be much better, and somehow Brendan outdid his last performance, going from 1.4 stars to 1.1 out of 10 stars. Rogan continuing to amplify Schaub just pissed off the fandom. This guy is my hero. Average fighter, average podcaster, terrible comedian, awful fight analysis. He's proven you don't have to be great at anything to be successful.
Exactly. And that is the main thing, is like the only reason, and I think I'm really catching on to the vibe of this video. I just personally think, right, that if if he wasn't friends with Joe Rogan, that definitely he wouldn't have a successful comedy career. Definitely not. Definitely not. But the fact that, it's not, but the fact that, like, yeah, they keep basically trying to get the fan base to fuck with Brendan Schaub, and they honestly don't. I am not the biggest. Okay, I've watched a couple episodes of Joe Rogan's podcast, but we're gonna wait to get to that at the end. And I don't know if I'm gonna react to this whole video. I might, but then I might not. I might get to a certain point where I'm like, okay, all right.
Successful. Now, I'm not blaming Joe for the mass hatred towards Schaub. He definitely did that to himself. If anything, this just proves that Joe is a good friend, willing to continuously promote his buddy despite the obvious lack of comedic talent, which begs the question.
But I mean, I don't know. Like, I have a different way of looking at that. You know what I mean? Like, I think I get what he means, though, for real. Like, I get what he means, but it's just, I'm coming from a place of, like, if that person has talent, or if that person is, like, very gifted with comedy, or very gifted, like, yes. But there has to be a point where you have to tell your friend, hey, man, you ain't him.
Question that people have been asking for years. Does Joe Rogan understand comedy? Because there have been countless examples of jokes sliding right over his smooth, round head. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Underdog is the easiest way to play fantasy. They also just launched Champions.
Was so smart and thoughtful. He wrote my 4 best movies. That's why he died. I made Tusk and Yoga Hosers. Like, without that dog writing for me.
How'd he write for you?
It's a joke, Joe. He was feral. He was just saying he was so smart.
Oh.
He was so smart. How smart was he? He's so smart he wrote my last few scripts. Joke didn't quite land. Sorry,
I was missing something. I
my
wasn't paying
bad.
attention.
Since Joe Rogan has been a comedian for 36 years and is the highest ranking comedy tastemaker, you would assume
you didn't understand that, man, and you're a comedian, bro. You're a comedian, Joe. And you didn't understand that? What the fuck am I reacting to?
that no joke would ever have to be explained to him.
That all came from a pair of rich, noble. Where were they again? In France?
Wiggers, I think they called them.
No, Wiggers are white people that wish they were black. It's a totally different thing.
Yeah. Yeah. We had the first one at our school growing up, and they put him in learning disabled classes. How crazy is that?
Ever?
Yeah.
You guys did the first one ever? I doubt it.
Joe being so quick to explain or take a comedian's words so literally is arguably more hilarious than if he just laughed.
Exactly.
And to be fair, what makes Theo Von so funny is that you never really know if what he's saying is true or not.
But you could also not see your body if you want. Like, I'll go sometimes, you know, I remember one time I went like 8 months without seeing my legs.
Theo's first appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience was in March of 2017. By then, he already had a Netflix special that came out 1 full year earlier. Now, getting a Netflix comedy special is huge today, and it definitely still was in 2016. But you have to consider Netflix had 75...
Like if you haven't honestly think, like a lot of people will honestly like be like, but Dave Chappelle, you know, when he had his comedy, when his comedy special dropped on Netflix, it was a really big thing. I do know in the comedy world, right? I'm not really well versed in the comedy world, but I know that like in the comedy world, having a Netflix special nowadays means that you've made it. You're up there. You know, I'm pretty sure Kevin Hart and a bunch of other people have had countless Netflix specials. You kidding me, man? I just went all the way back. Sorry, guys. I just slid this all the way back.
He wrote my 4 best movies.
Hold on, guys. I'm sorry.
I wasn't paying attention.
Since Joe Rogan has been a comedian for 36 years and is the highest ranking comedy tastemaker, you would assume that no joke would ever have to be explained to him.
That all came from a pair of rich, noble. Where were they again? In France?
Wiggers, I think they called them.
No, Wiggers are white people that wish they were black. It's a totally different thing.
Yeah. We had the first one at our school growing up, and they put them in learning disabled classes. How crazy is that?
Ever?
Yeah.
You guys had the first one ever? I doubt it.
Joe being so quick to explain or take a comedian's words so literally is arguably more hilarious than if he just laughed. And to be fair, what makes Theo Von so funny is that you never really know if what he's saying is true or not.
But you could also not see your body if you want. Like, I'll go sometimes, I remember one time I went like 8 months without seeing my legs.
Theo's first appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience was in March of
Like 8 months
2017. By
without seeing
then,
my
he
legs.
already had a Netflix special that came out 1 full year earlier. Now, getting a Netflix comedy special is huge today, and it definitely still was in 2016. But you have to consider Netflix had 75% less subscribers back then, so way less people had the potential to see it. It wasn't until Theo started making appearances on podcasts that he developed such a diehard fan base. So getting on Joe Rogan was arguably more important than Netflix. And it was on this very first appearance where Theo's ridiculousness and Joe's killing the joke dynamic was established.
Like if a plane crashed, I already know I'm planning ahead, dude. I'd eat a Vietnamese guy.
Why?
Because that's easy. It's a starter move. If you attack somebody bigger, if you eat somebody bigger in front of other people, it's going to alarm people.
You got to eat a small person, so stature is important.
I think if you gum down a Viet, people aren't going to be that upset at you.
Well, the Vietnamese people are going to be super upset. What are you talking about?
No,
Somebody's
okay.
dad.
Yeah, they're more understanding of things, dude.
Joe begins to take Theo seriously and starts talking about why Theo's wrong.
That is the thing, though. Like, I don't know if he's doing it, but here's the thing: people might not know this, right? Y'all ever think that maybe Joe Rogan is doing this on purpose and acting like he doesn't understand Theo Von on purpose, and it's a whole part of like the joke?
Here. But Theo is a master and is able to use Joe's own boring tangent as the punchline.
But what is interesting is like Vietnam is one of the few places where Americans can go back to Vietnam and they don't seem to hold any grudge at all.
Exhibit A. Exhibit A, man, honestly.
Theo told another story about being neighbors with and working out with David Duke, who was a KKK member elected as a Louisiana state representative. Instead of hearing Theo's insane story, Joe just began searching Wikipedia to learn about David instead.
He touted himself as a pro-life fiscal conservative, was known as an ex-Klan member. He eschewed overtly racist language and instead pointed to crime in the city, criticizing affirmative action and minority set-asides.
Yeah, I just did chest and tries with him, so I wasn't in all that. We just did basic workouts.
Title this, Joe interrupts another guest story to try and remember something that doesn't even contribute to the conversation. Despite this, Theo did make Joe laugh a lot. Some argue that the only time Joe ever belly laughs is because of Theo.
Oh, dude, I used to do, sometimes I would do so much cocaine, my freaking eyes would dry out.
Ooh,
and
look at you grinding. You're thinking about it. You go deep, huh?
Oh, dude.
But you're that dude. You go deep with whatever the fuck you're doing.
I like to get right on the. I like to be a peeping Tom if I can. I'll watch your whole family eat dinner.
The demand for Theo Von content exploded. The JRE Clips channel would post animated versions of Theo and Joe's conversations that received millions of views, since Theo's recollection of small specific details made it so easy to paint a picture. Every time Theo would appear on JRE, he received a huge boost in subscribers, helping him grow his own This Past Weekend podcast. On his third Rogan appearance on July 6, 2018, he posted his podcast with Jordan Peterson the exact same day, which became his most viewed.
I was about to say, Theo Von, isn't he like one of the biggest podcasts now? Honestly, we're gonna lump him into the my opinion on Joe Rogan and 1% podcast and everything. The end.
video on his channel for years. Despite the obvious advantage Theo had by being Joe's friend, he did not abuse it. He's only been a guest on the podcast 7 times in 8 years. Theo clearly wanted to build a name for himself, start his own empire, and create an environment where people would understand him and his humor instead of Joe missing 50% of his jokes. And at this point, the awkward silence where Joe either ignores a joke or doesn't understand it, and then the comedian is trying to figure out how to pivot, is funnier than if the joke just actually landed.
Yeah.
Everyone has the right to be whatever the they are.
Oh, you think?
I think so.
What about Nazis?
They have the more of a right. A third right.
I don't think that's right. I think it's something. That's a different word. It's
Reich?
Yeah. What does that even mean? What is Third Reich?
I don't know.
I know what the Third Reich is.
It's a joke, man. Third right? You don't...
Take a guess.
Bro, it's a joke.
I literally have no idea what that means.
You could argue that Joe's podcast is so multifaceted, covering a wide range of topics such as news, pop culture, UFC, cold plunging, alien conspiracies, DMT, chimpanzees, that it's difficult for him to immediately assess a joke when he is discussing something serious. Then again, why wouldn't you expect a comedian to crack jokes no matter what you're talking about? That's their job. Or maybe Joe is playing the straight man role, which is the partner in a comedy team who feeds lines to the other comedians.
Wait, hold on. No. He is playing the straight man role. What you talking about? Talking about straight man role. I think he is.
Who then makes witty replies. One person we can guarantee he is not playing this role to is Brian Callen. Joe and Brian have been friends for decades, and Brian has co-hosted the podcast 85 times. You would think Joe would understand that Brian pretending to be a tough guy is a funny gimmick since he is a small old man.
I got bullied for a full year, and it turned me into a if somebody tried to bully me, I'll show up at your house and kill you. That's what happens. I get so angry.
I'm not buying that even remotely.
I hate it.
Hey,
that's
bro,
not true.
You bully me.
If I
you try bullying me right now, mother.
Problem is,
hold on, let me handle this.
Here's the problem. You've talked to too many guys that let you say shit like that, and then it becomes like vernacular.
And in case you're wondering, this is how you're supposed to riff with Brian when he starts running his mouth.
I'm gonna tell you this right now.
Yeah.
Watch your tone.
Okay. What's gonna happen? What are you gonna do? Use some of that boxing you've been doing?
Don't you disrespect.
But since Joe has been a diehard UFC fan and employee since day one, he is not even remotely interested in joking about it.
Should they do something like that in UFC where different people that are more behind the scenes fight each other?
No.
So, you versus Bruce Buffer.
No.
Would you watch that?
No, you want to watch people fight that are actual fighters.
So when Brian turns on this tough guy act, Joe is convinced he's being serious because he hangs around fighters and hits the gym occasionally. Then again, you could argue that Joe is just genuinely sick of Brian and has been listening to his bullshit for years. Like on episode 2017 when Brian was joking about Schaub returning to the UFC to fight Derek Lewis.
He was throwing Derek Lewis out there with no gloves.
Good Lord.
But wait, hold on. Just hear me out.
Do you want to die?
Sir, hear me out.
What?
I'm just talking about just shoot a blast double.
Shut the
take the ground, and then we got that.
But here's the thing, though. We all have that friend, though. That's the thing that I don't get. We all have that friend that's like, yeah, we know you totally went to Mars last week, motherfucker. You totally went to Mars last night, motherfucker. Like, we know those people who just lie and who exaggerate what they do, who they are, and what they would do in certain situations. Like, I know people that exaggerate, highly exaggerate, but that's just how it is, bro. Like, some people exaggerate, but he's doing it for like a comedic purpose. Joe's friend is doing it for a comedic purpose. You know what I mean? But with this video, right, I'm just going to get in because it's going to be a little bit. I'm just going to get into okay. So, in December, I started the What's Happening Mental Health podcast. That is also available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, everything. And I learned about percentages of podcasts, right? There's like 50%, I think 30%, there's like 30%, something else, and then there's 1%, right? Now, like Theo Vaughn, Joe Rogan, all of those people are in the 1%, right? And as a beginner podcaster, I've encountered a lot of things, right? One of those things is a lot of people don't like listening to podcasts that aren't in the 1%. And it's not me just saying that. A lot of people do not like watching podcasts that are in the 1% or that are not in the 1%. But I've, been tuning in, or not tuning in, but I've been, working on my season 2. And as I've been working on my season 2, I've been listening to a lot of other smaller podcasts, right? Like the indie, like kind of like independent podcasts. That is honestly, right, where it's at. Because if you really think about it, the top 1%, a lot of people don't realize the top 1% podcasts, most of them all have the same guests or a rotation of similar guests. So you're getting to hear the same people's story multiple times, right? It doesn't matter if you're watching like a true crime or you're watching a mental health or alien conspiracy, but they all relatively have the bigger guests, right? But here's the thing, they're normally the same guests with the same types of stories, right? And I'm also just say this. That doesn't really help you having big guests on there, or guests that have been on the 1% of podcasts. It doesn't end up helping you really in the long run, and I'm gonna tell you why. It's all on the podcast content that you provide. If you're providing good podcast content, it doesn't matter who you have on there. You could have a brick wall on there, be talking to a brick wall, and people are going to want to watch it and listen to it. It's all about the product you provide. It's not about the percentages. But this is where it gets kind of dicey. Joe Rogan signed a $200 million deal with Spotify. Now, I honestly think that a lot of that money, that's $200 million. A lot of that money they could have gave to smaller podcasts, right? And they probably would have ended up making more because it would have been more diverse content. And that's what I'm trying to say. The podcasts that aren't in the 1% have the most diverse content because it's not the top 1%. They have to do anything they can to stay on top, to stay relevant. So if there's a new guest on, or if there's somebody making the rounds, they have to get that guest. You know what I mean? And just because, and there's even people who won't get on podcasts that aren't in the 1%. Meaning they would decline me, but get on like a Joe Rogan. And I'm not saying this out of like any disrespect. But honestly, if you decline being on a podcast because they're not in the top 1%, I don't really think you should be going on to them at all. Because it's not helping growing the business. It's not helping growing the podcast community. my thoughts on Joe Rogan. He kind of falls under the shows of the 1% that I was talking about. That's why I don't really watch him. The content to me is just not. I don't want to say that he ain't doing his thing, because he's really doing his thing. But I'm just gonna say it's not my cup of tea. It's not something I would want to listen to all the time. It's not something but I don't hate him or anything. I don't disrespect him. Honestly, somebody who's able to build up a platform for that long, or stay doing this for that long and have that big of a platform, props to them, because that's what I'm trying to eventually be. But it's a thing where I just feel like with the smaller podcasts, there's just a lot more diverse content. Just a lot more diverse content. But this is it, guys, right? This has been the live. I am going to probably just chill out. I don't know when I'll probably be live again sometime this week. But I hope you guys had a good Memorial Day and everything went well with that. I'm just going to be chilling, posting content, keeping the live streams going. Hopefully this YouTube channel gets up and it gets going soon. But make sure you guys also hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. And also, too, you guys can donate to my Cash App. Don't be afraid to donate to my Cash App, even after the stream ends. You guys can do that. All right, guys. See ya. Peace.